In the big scheme of things, the question of why a crime is committed is one of the most complicated questions that gets asked. Most psychological theories consist of one's childhood experience, intelligence, and their personal traits. And knowing the background of where someone grew up and their family's perception on life and the influences that surrounded them growing up contribute a great deal to the probability of someone's potential to commit crime. And I want to talk about Eric Smith. He was a 13-year-old, and he was found guilty of murder of a 4-year-old boy named Derek Roby. And at just 13 years old, he was convicted and sentenced to the maximum for a juvenile at that time, 9 years to life. Gabriel Tardy, a behavioral theorist, believed that there is a correlation in early childhood experiences, and it influences one's likelihood to commit a crime in their future. So as a young child, Eric was known for enjoying his time with his grandparents. He would give hugs and kisses, and he would act like a typical goofy boy at their house. Although during this very young age, it is said that Eric's father started denying him as a baby and eventually just left him. He left him and his mom just to survive on their own. Later on through the courts, it was found that this Randy Havnar was in fact his biological father and was ordered to pay child support, but he never returned to the family home. As he reached elementary age, Eric became more of an introvert due to being bullied for his physical appearances. He had low ears, heavy glasses, a speech impediment, red fluffy hair, full of freckles, and he was really tormented through school. He eventually became a loner, and he would spend many hours alone riding his bike around his town. He was actively told by his mother that his father had abandoned him as a baby, and she was not shy to tell other people around the town that he was abandoned. Short time later, Tammy reunited with Randy, and after a while, she did tell Eric that Randy was his biological father. Tammy started sleeping with Randy once again and became pregnant with their then second child, and it was a girl. And periodically, Eric would watch their father, Randy, pick up his sister from their home and wouldn't even acknowledge his existence. This was when many testified that his anger became a big behavioral issue. In early research around the 1800s, Charles Goring discovered a relationship between crime and flawed intelligence, and could also lead to lack of diminished social behavior. It's pretty interesting that children with conduct behaviors or conduct disorders early on in life are more likely to have a hard time being rehabilitated and may have long-lasting issues into childhood, adulthood, and it's like a spiraling downfall almost, and opens floodgates to a complex lifestyle. Without treatment early on, many children may have relationship issues, a hard time holding a job, or may even develop uncontrollable urges of anger. Oppositional defiant disorder could be characteristics that behavioral analysis see in criminals. Dr. Stephen Herman, a child psychologist on the case, diagnosed Eric with intermittent explosive disorder, or as we know it, acting in rage for no reason. Randy and Tammy reconnected and had that second child together, but eventually Tammy married a man named Ted Smith, who in turn adopted Eric and could be passionate sometimes and loving and emotionally connected with when he felt like it. But Ted had a very violent side, and he also would abuse Eric. So not only was he being bullied at school, but he was being bullied at his home life as well. And from the depths of the research that I've done, the only means of comfort that he ever had came from his grandparents, Edie and Red Wilson. Many reported that Eric started to torture and kill animals at a very early age. And there are many academic literatures and psychological writings that link cruel and unreasonable animal abuse to sadistic behaviors and eventually could lead to acts of murder. At age 13, Eric had only reached the 5th grade. This boy was a ticking time bomb. His biological father abandoned him. His stepfather was abusing him. His mom wasn't nice to him. He was tormented in school, and he had no friends. On August 2nd, 1993, Eric was heading to a summer camp at a local park in their town. And Derek Roby at that time was 4 years old. and he was walking to the same camp that day. Normally, Derek would not be walking alone, but however, on this day, Derek's younger brother needed his mother's full attention. He was only 2 at the time. And because she could only see the park from the top of their driveway, she allowed Derek to start walking. It was a straight shot from their house to the park where the camp was being held. This was the first time that he was ever allowed to walk by himself without supervision, and it was a decision that I'm sure his mother has regretted ever since. Unfortunately, Eric was having one of those days. He was having a horrible, horrible day. And he ran into Derek on that same path walking to the camp. Eric coaxed him into this very heavily wooded area that was real close by the path, and Eric proceeded to torture, strangle, and beat Derek to death. He then sodomized his fragile, now deceased body, even pouring Kool-Aid in his open wounds on his head and smashing a banana right next to him, which was unusually weird because that was the only fruit that he did not like. He then went home and just acted like nothing ever happened. 7 days later, he was arrested and he was convicted of murder. While we might catch on to some of the warning signs, it can be easy to convince ourselves that there are other reasons behind these behaviors. Maybe we dismiss bad behavior as, oh, he's just a boy, or it's a girl thing. But we tend to want a quick answer for things, and sometimes it's not always clean cut and right to the point. We need to ask those hard questions and be open to the answers we do not necessarily want to hear. And this applies to everyday life. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's a great example. But what we see on the outside is just a small layer of who someone is until we start asking questions. We may never fully understand who someone is, but I'm very much looking forward to digging deep into the behaviors of psychology in this class. And I'm ready to understand the research of all the probabilities of why.